Every year, there's a guy who we expect to come out of the draft, but they don't. They decide to stay in college for another year to try and improve their draft stock in hopes to be an even higher pick. This, I think, is going to become more and more common with NIL money and college athletes able to profit off staying in college. But last year, Florida State edge rusher Jaredverse decided to stay in school for the 2023 season, which took a lot of people by surprise. A guy who was believed to be a top 15 pick decided to stay another year and now has a real chance to be selected very high in the 2024 NFL Draft. But hey guys, if you guys are new to the channel, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. We just hit 1,000 subscribers this week, but I would love if we can double that by the end of the year and get to 2,000. Also, leave a comment and let me know what you guys think of Verse down below, and without further ado, let's get into it. Verse burst onto the scene in 2022. A transfer from Albany, he went to Florida State and dominated in the ACC. He had 47 total tackles with 9 sacks on the year. He also had 22 pressures to go along with it as well, and he showed some real potential as a star edge rusher at the next level. He decided to go back to school in the 2023 season, and while his numbers are down this year, he is still flashing tons of potential. So far this year, he has 15 tackles and 2.5 sacks on the season for the Noles. Verse has pretty good size for an edge rusher. He has the ideal size profile for a modern edge rusher, standing at 6'4", but not only does he have good height, but he has long arms as well, which is something that is very important for edge rushers as they rely heavily on their hands and their arms. He checks out physically, which is nice to see. Verse is super quick and has fantastic speed for an edge rusher. Coming into the season, one of my biggest concerns was that he didn't have amazing speed, but that area has greatly improved for him so far in 2023. He's a phenomenal athlete, and he has tons of upside simply based on his athletic profile. Verse as a pass rusher is dynamic. He rushes with a ton of power, and he has a super quick first step, and the ability to change direction and turn on a dime is something that I really love to see. He uses his arms and his natural strength very well and is able to push back on the offensive lineman and crowd the pocket. While his primary strength is as a power rusher, he has developed some really nice pass rush moves, which is something I really love to see. Verse has developed a nasty spin move that seems nearly unstoppable. On top of that, he has a really nice swim move. It does a really good job at getting skinny between the tackles and finding his way into the backfield. But as I mentioned, his strengths come as a power rusher. He's got that quick first step and strength, and he's able to bully offensive linemen to get to the quarterback. Verse also has improved at setting the edge in the run game, and he's become much more of a threat as a run stopper off the edge. While he isn't an elite run defender, he definitely has improved a bit. However, there are some concerns here and there and room for more improvement, as it's not one of his big strengths in his game. Verse weighs 251 pounds. While I don't think this is a major deal for him, some have questioned his playing weight. I think his weight is going to be fine for him at the next level because he has so much power and is such a good athlete. I think he can make up for the concern of weight, and some people have questioned if he does put on more weight, how does that affect his athleticism? He's a bit of an odd player in that regard. I personally don't think it's a concern that he's only 251 pounds. Some have also questioned his ability as a tackler from time to time. There are some issues in this area. He does miss tackles from time to time, but it was not a glaring issue, but something I felt I should mention. He just didn't have the right mechanics sometimes, would overextend on tackles, or just miss guys flat out, so that's something that needs to improve from him. Another area I want to see improvement in is his pad height. He plays pretty high very often, which slows him down and doesn't allow him to get that leverage from his lower body strength. So I want to see him improve there, because he has so much power, and when he gets low, he's dynamic, but when he's up high, it's harder for him to shed blockers. Lastly, he is more of a rotational pass rusher at this point in time. He is not an every down player for Florida State, so that's definitely going to be something to monitor as he develops and gets better as time goes on. Jaredverse is a guy who I'm a big fan of, and I've been a big fan of since I studied him this summer. I love his pass rushing chops, and I love his upside. He is my number 1 edge rusher in the 2024 NFL Draft and is my number 9 overall player in the entire class. Verse is very scheme versatile, no pun intended. He can play anywhere on the field as a pass rusher, but I think a true edge in a 4-3 would be his best fit. This would allow him to play low, use his power more often, and get put in more one-on-one situations where he can use his best traits on a consistent basis. There are a lot of players who remind me of Jaredverse. Derek Barnett was one of the first names that came to my mind. But the player who I see the most in Jaredverse is a former Florida State edge rusher and Carolina Panthers Brian Burns. They're very similar in terms of size, and they have a lot of the same traits. Both are very powerful, both are quick, both are great athletes, and they're both very versatile. As we've seen with Brian Burns this year, Carolina was running a 4-3, they've now switched to a 3-4, and he has been just as dynamic there, and you can play him anywhere on your defense, and I think Jaredverse is very similar in that regard. So Brian Burns is my comp for Jaredverse. Verse is a beast. He has tons of power and has really solidified himself as one of the top edge rushers in this class. For that reason, I think Jaredverse will be a top 15 pick in the 2024 NFL Draft.